Shalom. All praises to the Most High. Anoka said, praise be to the earthly mother, the Pachamama, and all of her earthly angels, the Erkadeshoi. Praise be to the Holy Spirit, the Kahe, in the name of his only begotten Son, Motsah the Lamb, unification to the nation. Alright, so we are still on the Taino Indian drop, and that's because some things are starting to come to me regarding, I guess, those lands. And I have to admit, I don't know if these brothers realize it, but they're actually kind of spot on with a lot of these, a lot of the locations of where they say the tribes were in that 12 tribe chart that they had. It's not everything, but in some cases, they were pretty correct. I have to admit. I have to give credit where credit is due. Specifically, I'm talking about the Taino Indians. I don't know how they realized that those people were actually the people of Joseph on this side of the world, because we have the tribe of Joseph on the other side of the world as well. But on this side of the world, it really does seem like the Taino Indians were the tribe of Joseph, being Ephraim and Manasseh. And Ephraim's land is in Manasseh's land according to the scriptures. So we're going to go over some theories real quick. So let's start off with the blessing of Joseph. And of Joseph he said, "Blessed of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, and for the deep that counseleth beneath." Beneath. And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun. So the land is sunny. And there's a lot of fruits that come out of it. And for the precious things put forth by the moon. And for the chief things of the ancient mountains. And for the precious things of the lasting hills. And for the precious things of the earth and fullness thereof, and for the good will of him that dwell in the bush. Let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph, and upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren. So that's also a prophecy for the so-called black Europeans who came over here and intermixed with the other half of Joseph. So Joseph is pretty much as a whole, like the whole tribe. They're very multi-looking, because you have half of the tribes over there and half of the tribes over here. So we're really going to look like a lot of different nations, or at least Joseph will. And Joseph, specifically Ephraim, is supposed to be awakening the rest of the Israelites right now. And you will notice that most of the awakening is coming out of North America, and that's because that is where mainly the tribe of Ephraim was shipped to. And I guess that's the Lamanite lineage. I think it's almost like they're chosen as the ones to break the Israelites free. And you'll notice anyone who has some sort of so-called African American heritage, or maybe Caribbean, or something of the sort, that's where the information is really coming out of. And I think this is why. I think it's because anyone who is, related to Joseph, they don't necessarily have to be from the tribe. They can maybe have some sort of lineage that has mixed in with the Lamanites of old. But I don't know. It's just a theory. We're gonna keep moving because this is just a part of the video that I want to speak on. So I'm not fully sure where all of the tribe of Joseph's lands are, but I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure where all of it is, but I'm pretty sure that Hispaniola, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, this is the land of Ephraim. I'm pretty sure that that's the case, as well as Puerto Rico. That's what it seems like. And maybe the rest of the Caribbean is maybe Manasseh. That's what it kind of seems like. And then maybe they have other lands. But you have to also understand, a lot of lands sunk, right? You can see that a lot of land sunk right here. There's a lot of land that sunk here. I think this is Guatemala. And there you can see all of this around the Yucatan Peninsula. A lot of those lands sunk, and I'm sure it was connected. Oh my, this place would have been beautiful. Oh my god, it still is beautiful, but wow, what a land that the Most High gave us. And our forefathers messed this up, man. Shame on you guys, but we got y'all. We got y'all. Don't worry. Now, here's something interesting. I didn't know that Joseph Smith said that the city of Enoch was in the Gulf of Mexico. Even he said that. Now, I just came to that conclusion based on research, but he said that. You know, and Joseph Smith had the Urim and Thummim before it was taken away from him and the people around him, because they were probably misusing it, you know, to push their doctrines. I don't know if Joseph Smith was misusing it, or, you know, I don't know what happened, but it is what it is, you know. I'm grateful at the fact that he kept one of our very important records alive, because we wouldn't have the Books of Remembrance or the Sealed Book of Mormon without that. So that was very important, you know. But let me read this. At evening prayer circle, President Young said, Joseph the prophet told me that the Garden of Eden was in Jacksonville Country, Missouri. And when Adam was driven out of the Garden of Eden, he went about 40 miles to the place which he named Adam Ondi Aman, and there built an altar of stone and offered sacrifice. That altar remains to this day. Excuse me. I saw it as Adam left it, as did many others. And through all the revolutions of the world, that altar had not been disturbed. Joseph also said that when the city of Enoch fled and was translated, it was where the Gulf of Mexico is now. It left that gulf a body of water. So, he's pretty much saying that, you know, that's the location of the city of Enoch. But I did tell you that Chichen Itza was built by Enoch, because that was the Great Temple. I'm not going to read the other part, because that's just assertions. Now, they were going to get into the Toltec Empire, because, you know, Toltecs, you know, they have to do with, you know, I'm sorry, blanking out. The sons of Issachar, because they're one of the sons of Issachar. So, they probably gained rule of their own land at some point. But I'm sure they had control, but just a certain clan of them had control during this time. And the Toltecs were instructed by Hamashiac to pretty much leave and to flee, because destruction's going to come on Mexico. Like, he told them that. He told them that after you guys, the Aztecs were going to take over, and they're a bunch of man-eaters, and some of the Aztecs were of the stock of the Toltecs. But the Aztecs, it seems like they were, you know, different groups of people. Seems like they were mainly Israel. Might have been some other nations in the mix. I'm not sure. But yes, so this is where they were situated, though. Now, they're not necessarily going to take anyone else's land, but they needed to take the Yucatan Peninsula, because why? Issachar, they, you know, they're readers of the stars and have knowledge of the stars and things of that sort. That's why I'm like, I'm pretty sure that they had controls of these lands. Like the tribe of Issachar had controls of some of these lands, mainly probably like Tenochtitlan and maybe Chichen Itza, but I'm pretty sure the land is like in this area, right? Like originally. Now, according to their 12 tribes chart or their map, Issachar is it was supposed to be to the east of Ephraim, but they don't have enough space. Not Ephraim, of Manasseh, but they don't have enough space. So, you know, they're they're making it look like this. But it said that Issachar was to the east of it. Now, it depends on what you mean by east, because sometimes like the directions can be flipped depending on what your perspective is. It's very confusing how the Hebrews look at direction. Like if you're facing the west, or you're bowing towards the west, I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm not even gonna try to. But just know that sometimes it could be flipped. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because if east can be flipped, then that means east would be this way, and east of where? East of this, or east of here, if the directions are flipped, you know, it would be in this area. But that would mean that the tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim would be around this area. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Going to Joshua 16. Wait, hold up. No, it's Joshua 17. Ephraim's territory was to the south, and Manasseh's was to the north, having the sea as its border, and adjoining Asher on the north, and Issachar on the east. Right? So that's what I mean. And as we went over, I believe that the tribe of Asher's land was in California, was in this area. I don't know how much, maybe Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, maybe there. I'm not sure. But I know that their land was very good. Or maybe this is Issachar's land. I don't know. Because it says that it's right next to Asher's land on the east. Maybe that's what they meant. Maybe it means that it was on the east of Asher's land. So maybe Issachar's land is, you know, like here. Right? Maybe. I don't know. So you can kind of get a feel. But it says Ephraim's territory was to the south and Manasseh's was to the north, having the sea as its border. Right? So there must be some sort of border in between their land. Again, with the land being sunken, I'm not necessarily sure. But I'm kind of getting the feeling that their land is in the islands. Let me see what I have to go to next. Quisqueya is one of the names of the Hispaniola island, believed to mean mother of all lands in the Taino language. I wonder why they would say that. I believe that it was also called a hill country or something of the sort, and that reminded me of the blessing of Ephraim. I'm just giving you the little pieces of information that I've gathered on the land, and I'm just trying to make a conversation starter. Because if Judah's land, it has to be in Peru, and they had a lot of land, so it could have extended all the way into the Amazons, right? I don't know. But they had more land than everyone else, pretty much. Like the tribe of Judah, they could have had like half South America for all I know. But you had other tribes living among the tribe of Judah, so it's not it's not going to be only Judah in these lands. But I'm just telling you where I think their homeland is, because Judah also traveled around the world, and were like kings and things of the sort. Moving on, because I wanted to add another part as to why I believe that their lands are like here. Maybe like Manasseh's land might be in Cuba, but I'm telling you, bro, those Hebrew Israelite dudes, they were kind of spot on, bro. They were kind of spot on. I'm gonna show you why. Or maybe it might be the other way around, actually. That Cuba might be Ephraim, and I don't know, but it's in that area. I'm not really necessarily sure, but I'm going to show you why. I believe it's in that area. There was an inheritance of clans of the tribe of Ephraim, along with all the cities and villages set apart for the descendants of Ephraim within the inheritance of Manasseh. But they did not drive out the Canaanites, who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites dwelt among the Ephraimites to this day, but they are forced laborers. Right? Now, where do we see that before? We saw that in Joshua 15. But The descendants of Judah could not drive out the Jebusites living in Jerusalem. So to this day, the Jebusites live among the descendants of Judah. And we were able to spot that the Jebusites are the Chachapoya, the cloud people, the cloud warriors of the north. Right? We were able to pretty much figure that out. Now, we are about to go over another group of people who were living in Cuba and were totally different from the other people, did not speak their language, and were cave dwellers. Let's see, where to start? Let's just start here. This is a good introduction. This is Taino culture. In 1492, and dodge any hijacks, I'm just reading it. In 1492, the Caribbean's indigenous people created an everlasting impact on the rest of the planet. After that year, the Spanish and Portuguese became conduits for the dispersal of many Taino and Carib products, words, and technologies. Some words like hurricane, canoe, barbecue, hammock, tobacco, cannibal, K or K, barracuda, maize, and savannah entered world languages. So did foods like corn, pineapple, peanut, sweet potato, yuca, chili peppers, allspice, sarsaparilla, or sarsaparilla, and much more became an integral part of the planet's diet and caused marked increases in population growth in Asia, Africa, and Europe. Most of these foodstuffs originated in South and Central America. Except for Jamaican jerk chicken, many other local fruits, medicines, and lumber have not yet become popular overseas. World-famous Jamaican jerk, pork, chicken, or fish, is a Yashaya Taino method of cooking that was called barbacoa, the original word for barbecue. So you see that? You you Jamaicans still think you African? Jamaica's Maroon societies learned this method of cooking called jerk. Listen to this, who passed it onto the contemporary societies. The term jerk is from a Maya word for smoke drying meat. This is why I tell people, yes, we are the Mayas. We are the Mayas. Because who are the Mayas? The Mayas are just the Israelites, bro. The Israelites, the kingdom, the United Kingdom of the Israelites. And then after it was split, there was a lot of infighting. But that's who the Mayas were. The Mayans were all over the world. They were known as the Nagas, right, of India. They were known as the Celts. They were known as the Inca because the Inca are just the Judaic part. Like, they're all related. They're all the same people. But maybe the Mayas were known as, like, the Northern Kingdom, and the Inca were known as the Southern Kingdom. That could be it as well, because the kingdom did split. But before, they were one big kingdom. And they ruled the world, bro. They ruled the world. The area of the Caribbean near the Carib Islands of Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Dominica, was the shorter gateway to the Americas from the Eastern Hemisphere after Columbus's second voyage in 1493, which he took everything he can see. This route continued to be used by foreign sailors until the invention of steamships. The Caribs were the inspiration for Shakespeare's play The Tempest, while Taino epic stories influenced the writing of La California and searches for the Amazons and gold. The first humans who populated the Caribbean did so over 6,000 years ago. These pre-Taino people have been called both Chiboni and Guanahatabey. Now we're going to get into this, right? Listen to this. These are the first people the first pre-Tainos. It's the Chiboni and the Guanahatabey, right? That's that. Whenever you see pre-this, like pre-Inca, pre-Taino, pre-Mayan, what is that? That's usually code name for Canaanite. But we're going to get into it. At the time of the Columbian encounter of 1492, There may have been many remnants of exclusive bands of hunter-gatherers of western Cuba that the Taino called Guanahatabeys. The Taino did not seem to be able to speak their language. It has been speculated that this early culture may have originated in Florida as Gladys, or from the Yucatan Peninsula. Interesting, because they're connecting it with the same people of Florida. And what did we learn about that? The Taligui, right? What was it also called? I forgot. I did a video on it. It was the Mound Builders in the part 4 of the Romans of Brazil. The Hopewell Mound Builders. Is there a connection between all of these red-headed giants? Who knows? The sea level between Cuba, I think he meant and, that's why I replaced it, and the Yucatan was lower, and islands between these land masses may have made the crossing easier. According to Father Bartholomew de las Casas, the Spanish chronicler, and I have a book from him. I'm going to get into it one day. I don't know. Maybe next week. I don't know. Of the early contact period between the defender of the Indians. And the defender of the Indians. In 1492, the Taino civilization consisted of 6 million people. I'm pretty sure there was way more than 6 million people, bro. The mainland ancestors of the Taino were once river communities who had originated in the Orinoco River Basin in South America. On the South American mainland, these ancestors of the Tainos were called Arawaks. By the time of the birth of Christ, the Tainos' ancestors had become seafaring navigators who had ventured north into the Caribbean Sea, populating the chain of islands that arch up like a Y from Venezuela to the Florida Peninsula. In the Caribbean, they became Taino when they absorbed the earlier inhabitants and evolved a distinct culture. In the Caribbean, they had established a more complex civilization, the center of which they called Haiti Bohio, or home, or Quisqueya. So they called that home. That's what I mean. I think that that's like, some sort of a homeland or promised land that was given to them. Or mainland. I don't know what it is, but it's something. They brought innovative agricultural practices of earthen mound plating, mixed interdependent plant varieties, beans, maize, and pumpkins, and irrigation canals where needed. They established large chiefdoms under caciques that controlled extensive territories, which conducted inter-island trade. The Tainos seem to have traveled extensively since, in 1519, Hernando Cortez encountered a Taino woman in the Yucatan. There are even those who speculate that there are Taino cultural traits in the indigenous population of the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. Interesting. By the time of the arrival of Christopher Columbus, the linguistic cousins of the Taino, people they called the Carib, or strongmen, had taken over the southern Caribbean islands. The Caribbean was named for this warrior society that had now expanded north, conquering the Taino men and intermarrying with their women, although there is no concrete evidence of the Carib practicing of hunting humans for food, because this is something that they were trying to push. They were trying to say, the Caribs, they were cannibals. No, they were whipping their asses, so they were trying to demonize them, pretty much. But I believe that the Caribs, actually, no, I don't know. I know that they're of, the children of Israel, but I was going to say what tribe I think they're from, but I don't think I know. It was from the Taino word Carib that Columbus recorded Caribalis. It is from the 15th century Eurocentric superstition that the word cannibal was coined. In his letters to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, Columbus suggested the institution of American slavery to his monarchs. The Spanish chose to dub any uncooperative Indio targeted for enslavement as Caribalis, and we know what Indio means, right? Una gente indios, right? During the indigenous American slave trade, this political justification was the pretext used to enslave in order to save the heathen souls. Hello. Alright, we're back. Alright. The Taino territory included the Bahamas, the Greater Antilles, I don't know what that is, Cuba, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and possibly parts of Florida. Now, when you read Joshua 16, it talks about the forest of Ephraim, and I was just like, is that talking about the forest of Florida? I don't know. Let me see. The Taino were the first humans to encounter Christopher Columbus and the Spanish in the Americas in 1492 on the Bahamian island of Guanahana, island of the iguana. Columbus took some Tainos, their products, and animals back to Spain as proof to his backers that he had found a new route to India, or the Indies. The Spanish called the people Indios, which is different from the word Hindu people use for the word India, and see dodge the hijack. On his return to the Caribbean during the second voyage, surviving Tainos showed Columbus a shorter route to the Americas. This route, used by Europeans until steamships were invented, brought Columbus and his 19 ships to the island Carib territories of Martinique, Guadeloupe, Dominica. The seafaring Tainos also showed Ponce de Leon the way to their outpost on the North American mainland, which they called Bimini. Ponce de Leon renamed the peninsula, I don't know why I'm saying peninsular, that's a weird accent, La Florida. The old European myth of a fountain of eternal youth was later associated with La Florida. Why are these people showing them all this stuff? Are they just stupid? There has to be something else. This don't even make sense. The Tainos were the first American people of sustained contact with Europe after 1492. In 1493, the Spanish sent 19 ships of colonization to Hispaniola. Hispaniola retained this prominent role of inter-hemispheric exchange until after 1519, when Hernan Cortez made his attacks from Cuba into Mexico, or the Aztec territory on the American mainland. Consequently, many words, ideas, technologies, materials, foodstuffs, medicines, and perceptions came from these first years of interaction between Europe and the Americas. The Spanish borrowed the Taino title of cacique and applied it to all the indigenous chiefs in the Americas. See what they do? A lot of these names don't mean anything. They're just names that they heard, and then they just said it, and then that was it. But they really destroy our language because they're not trying to connect. They don't want us to connect back to, what certain places meant, because they're biblical names. I'm surprised that mountain Uyayako in the middle of the desert still remained. I was surprised because it kind of literally meant Mount Sinai in a way. So that was very surprising. Let's skip down. I don't think we have to read anything more of this. It's not really the point. I'm not going to repeat when they repeat it in other articles. I just wanted to give you a backdrop. Let me see. Let's move down. There were two tribes, the Arawaks and the Caribs. The former were peaceful, friendly people who were decimated by the latter, who sought war indiscriminately and practiced cannibalism. See, even among, and this person is a so-called Trinidadian writing this stuff. But even they have been brainwashed by a lot of the propaganda that people push. We have to really realize what type of propaganda are we listening to. A lot of this, anti-Haitianism, this immigrant, anti-Mexican, anti-black, anti-looking like Negro, and all this stuff. This stuff is for separation, and people are feeding into it. But no, the Caribs were not cannibals. Where you're gonna find out what the Carib actually means, what it actually means. Let me see. Let's go down. If the provenance or if the provenance of the label of Arawak is murky, the labeled Carib is less so. The word is purported to mean brave, and who is braver than the people who resisted the advancement of the colonizers? In the eyes of Columbus and those that came after, brave means aggressive, or becomes aggressive. Columbus and others of his time stoked the mythology of the cannibalistic, ruthless Carib with the Spanish monarch to obtain their approval to launch a slave trade that would fund the development of the Caribbean. And that's exactly what they did. They lied about a whole bunch of things. Yeah, we had some sort of human sacrificing, and some people were even eating people. But it was not to the magnitude. Like, they really gassed it up. You know? I'm not saying that we were angels. Bro, we couldn't have been angels if the Most High sent what he sent. But I am saying that they're also going to lie about things. So we have to keep both into consideration. They're going to conflate, and inflate the truth. Let me see. In exchange for supplies and livestock to help the colonists gain their footing, Columbus would send ships of slaves drawn from the vengeful Caribs. He even sent them a sample through the people he shipped back to Spain were taken from the friendly Arawaks because those people he could readily access. Wow. Yeah, and some tribes of our people are less aggressive than others. The Caribs were ready to fight. The Arawaks, they were like, nah, like, we're not really just trying to fight you. Like, we just want to be alone. And he ruthlessly, it's crazy. But we deserve this stuff, It doesn't matter how friendly we are. We weren't friendly to the Most High. So it is what it is. He didn't want to do it, but we forced him to do it. So who's the wicked one? It seems the Spanish initially deferred and postponed a decision, but Columbus kept up his campaign, and in 1503, Queen Isabella issued a proclamation that agreed to the capture of the hardened, idolatrous cannibals. She reasoned that removing them from the Caribbean was the first step in converting them, and subsequently civilizing them. So we already had so-called Christianity over here, yet they're converting us to Christianity. It literally came from our side of the world. The Mayans were the first nuns. Like, what are you talking about? But it is what it is. This created an impetus to find many Caribs as possible, and was likely exacerbated by tensions that likely existed between and among the different indigenous communities, all of which likely practiced some degree of ritualistic cannibalism, by the way. No, they were ritualistic, and they sacrificed people, but they weren't eating people. Some of them on that island were eating people, but it's not something that was done because, oh yeah, it tastes good, flesh. Like, that's not what they were doing. If they did it, it was probably to make a point. Just to prove a point. My brother was telling me how this woman said that that she was threatening to, chop a man's junk off and eat it with plátanos. Like, it's to prove a point, I'm guessing. Taken together, it is easy to see how the alleged numbers of the Caribs could have increased monumentally. Many of the indigenous people of the Caribbean were eradicated by disease, starvation, and hardship by the work they were made to do in the mines, as drivers, and on plantations. No, y'all are still there. That's the thing. They said that they all died, and then they just brought a bunch of people from Africa. No, they didn't die. A lot of them did die, but they're acting like all of them died. No, they didn't. By the middle of the 16th century, their numbers were so low that the import of Africans as slaves was necessary to continue the colonial conquest. We know how that story goes. No, bro, they did not transport. They did transport people from Africa, but they did not transport that many people from Africa. Why are they going all the way to Africa when they have people right next door? It doesn't make any sense. But it is what it is. Moving on. Let me focus on the Guanahatabeys. If not, you guys understand a little bit about the history. Let me read this. The Tainos lived throughout most of the Caribbean. The immediate the immediate neighbors of the Taino were the Guadalajara who lived at the far northern end of Cuba and the island Caribs on the Lesser Antilles. The Guadalajara separated the Tainos from the fully civilized people of the Middle America. The Tainos occupied most of the greater Antilles. They lived particularly on the island of Haiti and also in Puerto Rico. They called that island Haiti Quisqueya. Let me see. The Tainos exchanged cultural, linguistic, and biological traits with the Guadalajara and the island Caribs. Some ethno-historians call the Tainos Arawaks because they are said to be descendants of the Arawaks from the northeastern part of South America. However, they prefer to be called Tainos, which means men of the good. Most agree that the Tainos who lived in Haiti or Bohio or the Boricanos of Puerto Rico had a more advanced civilization. So we're still digging on the Guadalajara, right? Because they said that they shared all these physical traits. They're not even telling you how the Tainos looked. So how do they know that they shared physical traits? So gotta dodge the hijack, bro. How did the Tainos look? They won't even tell you that. You know, the Taino culture was dominant throughout the Caribbean, a sea and island world that was in turn the cradle of Taino civilization. In agriculture, seafaring, and cosmology, Siboney and Guanahatabey, Mycorrhics, and/or Sigallo, and even Carib, all followed the material and much of the psycho-spiritual framework of the Taino. So the Taino were the head tribe, right? And I don't know why they're putting every single tribe in the mix, but it is what it is. Let me see if there's any more. Columbus reached Cuba on his first voyage without realizing it was an island and discovered the Guadalajara Bay. Siboney, okay, not telling me anything here. Let's move on. Who were the first inhabitants of the Caribbean? They found this, right? I don't know what this means, but hopefully they speak on no, and they don't. Okay, moving on. Okay. Let me see. Like, no one knows anything about them. The final group in the Antilles was a small tribe called the Guanahatabey. They were located on the westernmost end of Cuba and tended not to mix with the other tribes. Why? Why is that? See, the Caribs and the Tainos, they intermix with each other at points, but the Guanahatabey, they just stayed to themselves. Why? The Guanahatabey spoke a different language than their Taino neighbors, so different that Columbus's interpreter could not converse with them. They were far less advanced than any of the other groups in the area. For the most part, the Guadalajara lived out in the open or in caves, living off of the sea. Shellfish, fish, and fowl were the main sources of food. They organized themselves into small bands instead of villages, never setting up a complex form of government like the classic Tainos. Because of their location, they were a very peaceful. You don't know what they were, but because of their location. They were very peaceful and passive people, similar to the Western Taino neighbors, with little to fear from other tribes. The Guanahatabey were generally free to live in peaceful solitude. And you're just going to put a period on that, right? But they don't really know. Like, let me see. There was something else. Oh, right. This was it. This is what I wanted to read. Now, Columbus visited the Guadalajara region in April 1494 during his second voyage. The expedition encountered the locals, but their Taino interpreters could not communicate with them, implying that they spoke a different language. The first known record to use the name Guadalajara is in a 1514 letter by the conquistador Diego Velázquez de K.A.R. I don't know. Bartholomew de las Casas also referred to them in 1516. Both writers described the Guadalajara as primitive cave dwellers who chiefly ate fish. Excuse me. The accounts are second-hand, evidently coming from Taino informants, such as scholars such as William F. Keegan cast doubt on these reports as they could reflect Taino legends about the Guadalajara rather than reality. So, I don't even know what the Taino legends about them were, but they were something even different from how they were referring to them. See all that peaceful people stuff, right? Where is it coming from? It's coming from the Spanish. But they will admit that they were cave dwellers who lived on the other side of the island. But to say that they were nobody, I'm pretty sure the Tainos knew exactly who they were. The Spanish made sporadic references to the Guadalajara and the distinctive language into the 16th century. They seem to have disappeared before any further information about them was recorded. How did they just disappear? That doesn't make any sense. People just don't disappear. So that's why, what I think happened? It was the same thing that happened with many of the other people. What they found here were Canaanites. And the Canaanites came and joined them and destroyed us. Because what does it say back in Joshua 16? But they did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer, so the Canaanites dwelt among the Ephraimites to this day, but they were forced laborers. While the Taino were all advanced, the Guadalajara just lived to themselves. Come on, bro. Something's off about that, right? Were they the Canaanites who lived in Gezer? That's why I'm reading all this. I'm trying to, maybe start a conversation or ask some questions, because this is just weird to me. These people come out of nowhere and no one knows about them. Let me see if I wanted to read anything else. Let's read this last thing. The Eastern and Western Tainos were very similar to their classic neighbors, but had slightly less advanced societies. The primitive difference among the three Taino groups was their level of hostility. The Western Tainos were very peaceful and passive. They welcomed Columbus and his men without caution and were helpful in aiding the Europeans' recovery from their long voyage. And then he, literally killed them. Wow. The classic Tainos were more warlike, but overall they were not a very violent society. The Eastern Tainos, however, tended to be much more hostile. Their close proximity to the Caribs caused them to be more violent and aggressive. When Columbus encountered them in the Virgin Islands on his second voyage, it is not surprising that they attacked him and his men. Island Caribs were thought to be violent, bloodthirsty savages. Tales of cannibalism and torture at the hands of these native peoples traveled throughout the Antilles, reaching Columbus when he arrived on the islands of San Salvador and Cuba. These tales were never substantiated, though the basis for them is well documented. So just because they documented it, that doesn't mean that you can prove it. Sorry, I'm playing around with my necklace. Just because you can document it doesn't mean anything. A bunch of people can just write, oh, they were savages, they were savages, they were savages. It doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it true. You know, anyone can write anything. These are invaders. These are the people who were sent to kill us. Are you going to believe them? Like, come on now. Now, you can take into account what they say and see if a bunch of different people say it, but, you know, even then you can't even trust it, because De las Casas, Bartholomew de las Casas, he was the only one who was willing to tell some sort of truth. Everyone else were a bunch of liars because they had to take the hush money. They weren't allowed to say anything. Now let's finish. The Caribs were not cannibals as the Tainos feared, but they did practice rituals or ceremonies in which they cut off the limbs of their enemies and cooked them. They believed that doing this, they would gain the skill and prowess of the opposing warrior. It was a sign of respect and admiration for their enemy. By the way, the Caribs would be related to like the people of the Amazon today, and they kind of look like them if you look at them. The Carib society was less complex than that of the Tainos. They lacked permanent chiefs and were constantly at war with each other and their neighbors. Chiefs were elected for each battle, so no leader lasted longer than the length of any given war. They often invaded their eastern Taino neighbors to raid their villages for wives. Their violent nature contributed to the horror stories that were spread from one Taino village to another. While these tales were exaggerated, the threat from the Caribs was real. If those are brothers, which I think they are, that's a terrible thing. Like, how could you do that? It's terrible. The final group in the Insulas was a small tribe called the Guanahatabey. They were located on the westernmost end of Cuba and tended not to mix with the other tribes. It's just the same thing, bro. Peaceful people. Well, I don't know. You guys can make your decision. And if you find anything more about them, you know, if anyone knows anything, please tell me. Tell everyone else. Leave it in the comment section. Because, you know, how I make my videos aren't really like, I don't dig all that deep. I just kind of ask questions. But if I'm led to the spirit to dig deeper, then I usually do. Just depends how it goes. So I'm just giving you what I know so far. But, you know, just some interesting parallels regarding these people who were left behind, and they seem to have a similarity with our lands. Like, I don't know, it's weird, but let me know what you guys think. May peace be with you. Selah Kala.